it's Bridget. Thank you for being here. I'm filming this on a Monday morning, and so I thought I would just turn on the camera and take you through a real-time planning session as I get ready to plan my week. I'm going to briefly talk about what I've used throughout this year and how it's transitioned into these 3 books that I'm currently using together. The first part of the year, in January, I started out using a Hobonichi Techo original A6 planner inside this gorgeous Hobonichi silver taut cover. I had it set up initially as a wallet with my ID and a couple of the primary cards I use on a daily basis in this cover. But the first 6 months of this year unfolded quite differently than what I would call a normal year. And so over time, it became very evident that, at least at that point in time, I was using only the monthly section in this planner consistently and not really using the daily pages efficiently. And so after 6 months of doing that, I realized that I was basically lugging around this book, although it is quite compact compared to an A5 size. It was still a heavy little bit of a chunk when you consider that I was really only using the monthly section. So for the month of July, I made a transition and I began using a monthly Traveler's Company insert in the month of July. And I'd had very minimal decoration in July, no decoration in August, but was using this as a primary functional planner only, again just using the monthly section. And I did a similar setup where I stored this inside of a traveler's notebook cover along with a canvas insert that held my cards and served as an all-in-one wallet. Then as the year continued to unfold, things began to stabilize a bit here at home. I found myself around mid-September wanting to revisit a more detailed type of planning. So at that point, around mid-September, I transitioned yet again into a Hobonichi Weeks as my primary planner. And another reason why I did that is because I have already chosen a 2022 Hobonichi Weeks for next year to serve as my primary on-the-go planner. So I wanted to go ahead and get back in this book and have some time during the last quarter of this year to just play around with it and kind of hone in on the actual planning process and find what is working, what isn't working. So that gives me time to make some tweaks along the way, and hopefully by the time I begin using the 2022 weeks, I'll have a fairly concrete working system in place. So what I'm going to do is go through a real-time kind of plan with me, if you will, beginning in the Hobonichi Weeks, and then I will finish up with the Hobonichi Cousin that I'm also using in conjunction with this book at this time. Now, the system that I've been using recently, still kind of tweaking from week to week, but I'm really enjoying what it's giving me from a functional standpoint. I'm using the weeks with the thought that this needs to house and include any information that I will need on the go or outside the home. So I'm not using it so much for tracking or daily tasks or to-do lists that can be accomplished inside the home. That is where this cousin is coming in, because I'm at home more now than I ever have been before. So that has given me the ability to have a book that just stays at home that I can refer to throughout the day for a very detailed look at daily tasks, to-do lists for things that need to be accomplished inside the home while I'm here. So the weeks, I do love the portability and the lightweight feel of this book. It can easily be tossed inside any purse or bag that I carry with me outside the home, and that's what we're going to start out with now. So I'm just going to get the other stuff out to the side, and while I do still use quite a bit of journaling supplies and goodies that I enjoy, washi tape, stickers, etc., I'm primarily doing all of that now only in my journaling in separate books. So right now I'm really trying to hone in on the functional aspect of planning. So I'm not doing any decoration in these books right now. The only supplies I've been grabbing consistently lately are the Hobonichi pen, because I can flip back and forth between all of these books without having to worry about allowing dry time for inks. And I have been using these two Hobonichi stencils fairly consistently. I'm not sure what the official names of these are, but I think this one may be considered the standard stencil. It's about credit card size, maybe a hair taller, but I'm primarily using this one for this row of check boxes, and then this one is a little bit taller, as you can see, and I'm primarily, honestly, only using it as a straight edge from time to time, but they fit conveniently in the pockets either in front of this book, but I'm pretty much pulling them out and storing them in the front pockets of the Cousin cover that I'm currently using. So they both fit perfectly within this book, and that way I don't have to dig around and look for them. And I've been doing my weekly planning the past few weeks on Monday mornings. So the first thing I do when I look at my weekly plan is go to the monthly section of the Hobonichi Weeks. And this is kind of the capture all for anything that I do not want to miss. So timed appointments, events, holidays, birthdays, vacations, things like that. I'm not putting any to-do lists or tasks here, because I like this section to feel, you know, like I can at a glance see what's going on and it not get too overly crowded with information. So this week happens to be the week of October 18th, 2021, and fortunately it is a very light week in terms of appointments and events. You can see, other than church on Wednesday night and Sunday morning, as well as a birthday, I have a couple notes to add to the weekend because this is a birthday weekend, but otherwise there's really not much going on this week. So that's going to make this portion of the weekly planning very quick and simple. So I'm just going to turn to the weekly section, and since I don't have any timed or appointments or events, I really don't have to refer back to this. I had some appointments last week, so when that's the case, I kind of just use my hand as a place marker and flip back and forth to bring those appointments forward to the weekly section. This week, because that's really not an issue, the only things I'm going to make a note of currently are church on Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. church on Sunday morning, which honestly, because of the birthday event that's going to unfold this day, as well as my sister will be spending the night Saturday night, more than likely I will watch the live stream of our church service, which is fortunately broadcast on Facebook as well as YouTube on Sunday mornings live. So more than likely I will not actually leave home for in-person service that morning. We will be celebrating my oldest son's birthday that day, so I'll just make a note of that. And I've been using a little quick hand-drawn icon that looks like a little gift for birthdays. And this Sunday will be my oldest son's 18th birthday. Holy moly. Now, occasionally, in addition to the Hobonichi pen and stencils, I have been pulling out mild liner highlighters just to highlight a heading, and so I will go ahead and quickly do that and give it just a minute to dry. And even though I'm only bringing over appointments and events to this section from the monthly, if there is a daily task that needs to be done on a specific day that involves leaving the home, I will go ahead and record that, because that is, again, what I want this book to serve. The purpose that I want it to serve is that while I have it with me on the go, it will remind me of anything that needs to get accomplished outside the home. So, because off the top of my head, I know that I do need to leave home today to ship a package at the post office, I'm going to go ahead and make a note of that on today. And here I'm just going to make a heading that says this week. And y'all let me know, please, in the comment section, what book or books are you in now for your functional planning? Have you maintained one system throughout this entire year so far, or have you found yourself switching up a time or two like me to kind of tweak things and find something that works out a little better for you? I'm always just curious and interested to see and hear what's working for other people. So this week, again, because this is the on-the-go book, I'm not going to list things that need to happen here inside the home. This will include tasks that need to be done this week outside the home. But if I'm not sure yet what particular day they need to be done on or will be done on, this kind of gives me a little landing pad to just make a note of things that need to get done this week, but not necessarily a specific day. Now, at the beginning of the video, you may have noticed, in addition to the Cousin, I also had this little pocket size Leuchtterm in the pile. And what I've started using it for back in mid-September and I'm absolutely loving, I'm using this, and because of its size, I'm easily just kind of keeping it within access, particularly with my cousin here at home, but because of its size, I could easily and have often been grabbing it along with the weeks and taking with me on the go. But I'm using it not as a full out bullet journal, but more so as a catch-all. You can see I started it on September 15th and put the heading here, Brainstorm. And because it has worked so well for me, that's pretty well what I've done with it for the last month consistently, is just used it as a place to brainstorm if something comes to mind, to capture it so I don't forget it, but yet not have to hold it in my memory if it's something that doesn't need to be done right that second. I'm just making a little notation in this book, and then as I'm going through my planning process, I'm referring back to it and pulling from it. So there are some, like detail the car at home. I made that notation on the 15th of September. Here we are a month later and I still have not done that. It still needs to be done. And because this week is a light week in terms of appointments and events, I am going to pull that forward this week into my cousin. I'm not going to list it here because I don't necessarily need to know that while I'm out on the go. But let me quickly scan this and see if there is anything that I've made a notation of recently that does need to go in my on the go list this week. And you can see some of the things in here aren't necessarily even a task, but you know, console organizer, cargo organizer. These are just some things that popped into my mind that I want to research and possibly purchase. So just being able to make a quick, messy notation and not have to worry about, you know, which book do I put that in, where do I put it so I will actually find it again. It's just nice to have, you know, this is kind of like my working brain here that I don't have to, you know, remember these things all the time. And you can see that as things do get either accomplished or become no longer applicable, I'm just crossing through them with a line. Okay, CPR renewal is something I've been putting off for a while that definitely needs to get brought forward this week. I actually started last week and still didn't do it, but because that's something that I'll do here at home, I'm not going to put it in my weeks. Some of these things that did get done in the past week, I'm just going to go ahead and cross through. Okay, turn in LHC device, ship at the post office. That is something that I have to do today. I've already put it on today's list in my weeks, so I am going to go ahead and cross it off in this book because it will be tended to here. And okay, grocery list and shopping. I'm just going to make a notation here. Buy groceries. Because last week I made a massive grocery haul to do a lot of freezer meal and crock pot meal prep over the previous weekend. This week's groceries, the list is going to be fairly short. Just things like milk, you know, that frequently need to be replaced. So that should be a quick trip that I may actually try to do this afternoon. Okay, and return library books. I'm not sure what day I will do that this week, but I am going to go ahead and put it on my this week list because that's something that will involve leaving the home. So since I've transferred it here, I'm going to go ahead and cross it off. And what has been working recently and prevented this from being you know, more overwhelming than helpful is when I do pull something from here and transfer it either to the Weeks or the Cousin, I do go ahead and mark it off in this book. So that actually completes the initial plan for this week in my Hobonichi Weeks. So I will obviously check it on a daily basis. I've tried to make it a habit and part of my morning and bedtime routines to lay eyes on my 2 planners. So while it looks fairly sparse, it will be added to throughout the week, but these are the basics that I need to know this week anytime I'm leaving the house. So that completes the Weeks section. Now I'm going to show you what I've been doing as a supplement, if you will, in this Hobonichi Cousin. And for the first time since I started using Hobonichi products in the year 2016, I did not include a new 2022 Cousin in my Hobonichi order for next year. And while that was such a struggle, because this book just honestly has always felt like home to me, what I have found is that the way I have been using it since the middle of September, if I'm truly honest with myself, realistically, the things that I've been doing in this book and the way that I've been using it can be done in any blank notebook. And because I have such a stock of notebooks that I've purchased over the years, several of them being literally still unused at this point, I do plan to continue this process, or at least a version of this process as it evolves next year, for an A5 size at-home detailed planning book. Instead of doing it in a Cousin, I will be continuing this in some form of a blank A5 notebook next year. So that may be a Nanami notebook, a blank Hobonichi notebook, possibly a Leuchtterm or a Midori. Those are just the ones that are coming to my head that I know I actually have already purchased here at home, not used yet, and need to be used. But since I have this Cousin now that runs through the end of 2021, that's why I'm using these pages for this purpose now. Now I am even going to switch it up a bit further this week to just try something new. I'll show you briefly when I started using it around mid-September. I started out making a very detailed list down the left side of the page for tasks and things that I wanted to include in routines here at home to try to reestablish some healthy habits and routines here at home. I then used the right side of the page just for notes throughout the day, and used the very bottom of the page for reminders. I started out the very first day using the Hobonichi stencil to make the little check boxes and checking them off, and you can see, because this was the first day I started this process, I was highly motivated, and I actually ended up checking off almost every box that day. But I found that this process of making all of those little individual squares was a bit time consuming. So the very next day I used the end of a Zig Clean Color Dot marker that just has that dot feature on one end, and I just made a dot by each task instead of drawing out the squares. And as I went through that day, I would just cross them out, kind of bullet journal style. And as time progressed, I ended up using these pages some days to just make more, quick notes. I would try occasionally to revisit the long detailed list. Some days I used it very sparingly or not at all. And here I tried to go back to the detailed list, but what I have found recently is when I took the time to make this long detailed list of every little thing that I wanted to accomplish throughout the day, occasionally one of two things would happen. Either I would have a very lazy, non-productive day and not cross off hardly anything, or I may have had a very productive day, but I may have chosen to focus my time and efforts on something else, not on this list. And so even though I may have had a very busy and or productive day, if I didn't cross off more tasks on this list than I actually did, I found that it was kind of serving the opposite purpose. Instead of motivating me and keeping me on track, when I would look back at so many things not crossed off, it would make me feel either guilty or frustrated. And I obviously want this to be a tool that's helpful and motivating and positive. So what I'm going to do this week, instead of starting off with this long detailed list, what I've been doing more recently is just, making notes of highlights of things that I accomplished that day. What I'm going to start this week and see if I like the, what would you call it? Maybe emotional aspect. Instead of setting myself up to feel guilty or frustrated if I don't check things off, I'm instead going to hopefully write out most, if not all, of the things that I want to do, but I'm going to list them as the day goes on and as they actually get accomplished, instead of setting up the list first to have a check off. And just see as this week unfolds if that's a more positive and encouraging way to accomplish these things. See if I see it written here this week, I'll know that it's something I did get done. And if there's something that doesn't get done, it's simply not on the page, and I'll know that, it didn't get done. So I am going to still use the top section of this week for priorities for each day. So I went ahead, at least for the first 2 days of this week, and used the Hobonichi stencil to mark off the check boxes. I did also record the weather at the top of each day for this entire week off camera before I started this video. And I did it Monday through Sunday, realizing that, because I live in the South and our weather tends to change on a dime, these forecasts likely will not be 100% accurate as the week unfolds. But the reason I'm tracking the weather like this now is because I do have several outdoor gardening containers in my backyard, and because the weather changes on a dime where I live in the month of October, as we move from here throughout the end of the year, we may have some days in the 80s or 90s, but any day now we likely will end up having a first frost, and some days in the 40s, maybe even 30s. So I'm going to start tracking the weather again for that purpose, just so I have a general idea. If I see a day, 3 or 4 days ahead that's projecting 40s or 30s in the temperatures, that will remind me and cue me that I need to check the weather again. And if we're going to have freezing temperatures, bring those outdoor gardening containers into a more protected area so I don't lose my plants. So I already did that off camera. Now, this is also where I will revisit my Brainstorm book and see if there's anything that needs to be brought forward that I did not put in the weeks. So these would be things that would be brought forward for this week that need to be done here inside the home, which is where this book will stay. So I've already mentioned detailing the car at home. I do want to put that on this week, and I am going to make a section here on Monday that says this week instead of this day. So that way it will just cue me of things that I would like to get done this week. Doesn't necessarily have to be on Monday. So as the week unfolds, I can handle this section almost like bullet journal style, where I can just bring things forward. It'll just, there again, remind me of things that need to be done so they don't get lost in the shuffle. So I'm just going to put another heading that says this week. And following that same system, once I transfer something from this book to either the Cousin or the Weeks, it gets crossed off, and that prevents this from becoming too overwhelming and me having, 12 or 15 pages to go through. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this off and bring that forward. Detail my vehicle. Okay, and these notations I've made about Christmas, oh my goodness, like we're gonna blink twice and it's gonna be Christmas. So even though I'm not bringing that forward now, I'm gonna have to be, we all are gonna have to be looking toward Christmas plans very soon, sooner than later. Okay. CPR renewal. That is something that I've been putting off for quite some time, so I'm actually going to put that in my priority section. CPR renewal. So I can mark that off. And I put it in the second block here. I'm going to go ahead and, because I'm still kind of making tweaks to this system, this may change in the future if I find, the best way. I'm trying to not duplicate a bunch of things, but I am in this first little block going to put a notation here of ship that item at the post office, even though I did put it in my weeks as well, just because it is a priority. So when I'm looking at this book at home throughout the day, it'll also just serve as a reminder that I do need to grab my weeks, my purse, the item, and leave the house and go ship that. So okay. Water indoor plants, that is something that definitely needs to be done either today or tomorrow. But I'm still going to go ahead and just put it under the this week section because, as I said, I'm going to try to reserve the left side of the page for things that actually get accomplished and not even write them down until they are done. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the header here and let that be drying just a minute, and I'm going to write the word accomplished or accomplishments. I think I'll put accomplished there just so I'll know what's up, since I'm changing things up here a bit. Okay, so since I've transferred indoor plants, I'm going to mark that off. water and fertilize outdoor plants. Same thing, that needs to be done either today or tomorrow. And let me know in the comments if you're doing any outdoor gardening. I know that's going to vary greatly depending on where in the world you live and your weather, but if you're doing any type of outdoor gardening now, be it container gardening or in the ground gardening, let me know in the comments below what plants you have going. I'm just curious what everybody's doing. I have I have 5 outdoor containers going right now with edible plants. Already did that last week. Okay, this week I do want to meal prep ground beef freezer meals. I did breakfast burritos and chicken crock pot meals last week. And I bought about a dozen pounds of ground beef at that large grocery trip last week, so I need to get those. They've been in the refrigerator the past few days and not the freezer, so I need to do those ASAP as well. Grocery list and shopping. So you can see, and I'm sure you know this has to be the case more often than not for most people, even though there were no time-specific appointments or events going on this week, things just, you know, add up very quickly. There's always something to do. Okay, and I do want to get some information that unfortunately I can't just be given over the phone. It requires a face-to-face consult before I make a decision, so I need to schedule that. Okay, so that is it for my Brainstorm book, but I do keep this handy throughout the day, and if I think of anything, a product that I want to research and possibly purchase in the future, it may be something so minuscule or it may be something very important. If I have the thought, I try to get directly to this book and jot it down, because I definitely, as I get older, have realized that my memory is not what it used to be. So now I'm going to write in accomplished in that header that I just made. And another thing that I'm going to do off camera, just because I'm hoping I can keep this video in real time where it won't require a lot of editing before I can post it. One thing I'm going to do as soon as I stop filming is go to an unused page. It may end up being 2 or 3 pages, but I'm going to go to an unused daily here in this book and make what I'm referring to as master lists. So since I'm not going to be writing all of these details in advance this week, I'm going to make what I call a master list for each of these sections, like a morning routine, my afternoon and bedtime routines, daily self-care. Make some master lists that include everything, you know, if time and energy and effort were not a consideration and I could just have an ideal day and accomplish these things, what is the master list of what those things would ideally be? And I'm going to attach some type of tab onto the side of those pages so I can easily refer to them throughout the week, and that way it can just serve as a visual reminder. Since I won't have the full list in front of me, I can flip to those master lists throughout the day as I have time and kind of go through and pick and choose and kind of be able to prioritize from what's left. Okay, you know, what things do I really want to get accomplished? So after I get that done off camera, I will include some screenshots at the end of this video if you're curious how those master lists turned out. But so far this morning, before I turned on the camera, I did already take my morning med. I did already put a chuck roast that I had prepared with all of the fixings over the weekend. I put it in the oven this morning, and this is something different that I'm trying today. Normally, like roast potatoes, carrots, onions, like a Mississippi roast, I've generally done that recipe in a crock pot in the past, but because I bought groceries at Sam's last week, and you know, everything is bigger at Sam's, or we don't have Costco here, but I'm assuming, you know, they're, from what I hear, they're fairly the same. The chuck roast that I purchased from Sam's is humongous and so much bigger than what I normally buy, and I just have a fairly small round crock pot, so it wouldn't fit in my crock pot. So I went to Google and just tried to look up, you know, what the low setting of a crock pot is equivalent to in a traditional oven. Supposedly it's around 200 degrees for low or 300 degrees for high. So I just put that meal in the oven on 200 degrees, and I'm gonna let it cook low in the oven for about 8 hours today, and fingers and toes crossed that it turns out just like it otherwise would have in the crock pot. So I'm just gonna say cook roast in oven. That'll be for dinner tonight. I have already turned on my Roomba. I try to run it daily, every other day at a minimum, but daily when I can. So I've already got it rolling this morning. I've already started 2 loads of laundry, which is part of my morning routine normally. Because it is a Monday, weekly planning, doing that right now. And I have not yet unloaded the dishwasher. I have not done swish and swipe yet, or my devotional. Those are usually kind of the main things. Ooh, I also need to change my bed sheets. I did not make my bed this morning either, which is normally one of the first things I do every morning, but I need to change our sheets. So I'm going to add that over here just because I haven't already accomplished it yet. Change bed sheets. So I may rack my brain after I turn off the camera just to make sure there's nothing else that can be added here, but those are the highlights that I have already accomplished this morning. So now I'm going to make those master lists, kind of get a plan going to get the rest of my day in a productive state before I have to leave home to ship this package. But hopefully this gave you some ideas. I'm always open to comments and suggestions for improvements. So I will try possibly to do kind of an updated video on this next week, since I did tweak the system, and just give you a realistic view of the week after it unfolded, and let you know if this in fact ended up being more or less helpful than making those long detailed to-do lists in advance. But that is it for my weekly planning system. If you're still here, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you watching and your support, and I will see y'all again soon. Bye, y'all.